Shin is finally coming out? What? Hello Summoners and welcome to another ProGuides video. I'm Zyrene and today we'll be talking about the recent posts, Quick Thoughts dev blog, and September's behavior update. Also, after almost 7 years since his announcement, Shin is actually being released, but just as a little legend. So we'll be focusing on the other two dev blogs today. But before that, today's question of the day is, what's your favorite splash art in the game? While in-game models and particle effects are what you get to see and use most of the time, I personally think the splash art for a skin is a huge selling point. And one last thing, be sure to visit us at ProGuides.com. We have the best roster of coaches, top-tier live classes from instructors like Mike Young and Saskio, and courses covering a variety of roles and champions from your favorite pro players like Doublelift. We also have a brand new VOD review feature, and we're super excited for you guys to try it out. The way it works is you send in a replay file, and the coach sends you back a fully reviewed VOD. It's a super convenient option for when you have a replay you really want to go over, but you don't have the time immediately available to book a live session. Now, without further ado, let's get started. We'll start things off with a bit of vague info from the Quick Thoughts blog. While it doesn't define exactly what they are going to be, Medler said he just wanted to give some context to the phrase quest skins, as it's likely we'll be seeing it in the next few weeks. It's going to be a new skin type, not just a new pricing tier. They will also apparently come with specific technical needs, and that's all we really need to know. Just going off of the name and those two bits of information, we definitely can't tell exactly what's going to be coming out, but we can infer that maybe there will be some type of interactive way to upgrade the skins, maybe using stat tracking similar to Eternals, with certain milestones being a threshold to level up the skin. Only time will tell at this point though, so make sure to sub to our channel to stay up to date on this and more. Moving on, we've received a small update on the behavior side of things. Though this update was much smaller than the posts in recent months, less information isn't necessarily a bad thing. It just means that they're narrowing down options and getting closer to hopefully solving much of the issues with toxicity in the community and boosting everyone's overall enjoyment when playing League. Specifically, the shorthand version of this update is this. Riot's initial tests for dealing with AFKs and leavers was successful, with a reduction in repeat offenders. The V1, or version 1, of their experiment will be rolled out in more test regions to ensure that it's working before it's 100% confirmed and rolled out globally. On the other hand, the experiment aimed at the intent to lose behaviors was a bit less spot on. While there was a whopping 500% increase in detection and punishment, many of those detections were false positives, which is definitely something that's really undesirable. As a result, the V1 changes for this were scrapped, with a new rendition being planned for the next month. While it's not a perfect first try, the attempt was a solid one, and with the information learned, the next iteration of the system should really hone in on a final solution. With all of this in mind, we will never reach a time where there are absolutely never rage quitters in League. So we'll also be getting the option to surrender early, as well as seeing some mitigation to the amount of LP you lose when someone ditches your game. We've covered these two changes previously, but this update has given a couple more details, as well as a time frame to work with. One of the most annoying things is having someone rage quit after a surrender vote fails to pass, and then having to wait for the timer to expire before you can forfeit again. Now, once an AFK is detected, the timer refreshes, giving you another shot. While this may only save a couple of minutes when you're already losing and someone rage quits on top of it, seconds can feel like hours, and you just want to get out as soon as possible. Expect the early surrender changes to come with patch 10.22. As far as LP mitigation goes, it's not as simple as AFK equals less LP lost. Factors like how your game was going before the AFK happened matter, as well as how often it's been happening affect the amount mitigated. These changes should be shipped on patch 10.24 if everything goes as planned. With all of these changes still moving along, we can rest assured that Riot has heard us and is doing everything they can to cut down the toxic behavior plaguing the game we all just want to enjoy. What is Riot even doing? X team needs to be fired, Y team needs to be replaced. How many times have you heard these complaints and more? Many times. Statements and questions like these are due to frustrations from problems, big and small, that build up over time. To help give some understanding to the approach on some things, Medler wants to give some insight into how Riot assesses their own work, starting with the gameplay itself in his dev blog. The first team covered here is the champion team. When assessing how good of a job the champion team did with a new champion or VGU, they are trying to quantify how players engage with said champion, how the champion affects League as a whole, and how the champion will do in the long term. Here's some of the metrics used when assessing this. Play rate of the champion, specifically how many games a player puts into the champion once they try them out, or the depth of appeal. While the number of players trying a champion or breadth of appeal is also taken into account, the depth matters much more in this instance. This helps to tell if interest is long-term, or if people are just trying out the new shiny toy. Player surveys on the champion's identity, things like theme, personality, art, etc. Tracking how often there are balance changes and bug fixes post-release to help correct the course for future champions. Internal assessment for champion complexity and technical risks. To explain this, sometimes there are ideas the design team may come up with for a champion that are just too difficult to implement, either because it's too hard to balance in game or because a certain mechanic is hard to get right on the technical side of things, resulting in a buggy or broken ability. No one wants to go through the nightmare of Azir's release all over again. How much a champion deepens League of Legends story and factions and helps to better represent the underrepresented groups in League. The second team is the Summoner's Rift team, sometimes called the Balance team, which is focused on keeping things compelling, fair, and deep in-game. This entails game balance, choice structures, counterplay, creation of highs and lows, variety of play experience, and more to keep things fresh and exciting. Some of the metrics to see how they've been doing include champion balance for existing champions. As we covered before, new releases fall under the champion team's responsibilities. Game pacing, specifically how snowbally games are, what times towers generally fall, and how much fighting there is. Player surveys to measure champion frustrations, champion damage and tankiness, and rate of gameplay change. Correlations between gameplay changes and level of player engagement. For example, how a change to certain champions and mechanics may influence a player to change roles to or from a role. Balance and meaningful choices for items and runes. Up next is the Game Analysis Team, aka the Playtest Team. Their role is to work almost as consultants, with them repeatedly playing new content, analyzing it, and giving feedback that can be turned into adjustments so that upcoming content, features, and balance changes can be fine-tuned. This team is made up of players that are good enough to show what the new content will look like at a high skill level. The assessments here are ability to predict impact of balance changes made by the balance team based off both theory crafting and internal playtesting. After they provide these predictions, the Summoner's Rift team can determine if they should change paths, and if so, how to do that. How predictions fare for new champions and VGU's balance at launch, and change in balance over time as players become familiar with the kit. Ability to quickly identify problems during development before the teams waste a bunch of time working towards something that is never going to work. Basically, nipping problems in the bud, allowing the teams to spend their time more productively. Overall value they provide to teams whose work they analyze. Moving on, the Competitive and Meta Systems team is focused on competitive rankings, some aspects of progression systems, and some areas where behavior and gameplay intersect. Some of what is measured here is ranked engagement, questions like how many players play ranked this season versus last season, or how does this engagement change over the course of the seasons, etc. Clash engagement, how many people try Clash, and how many come back for multiple tournaments. Matchmaking quality, how small the MMR differences are between players, how long it takes to match players, what percentage of players get their primary role, what percentage of players are autofilled, etc. Player behavior metrics around things like AFK rates, frustration with other players' toxicity, etc. How players feel about features like ranked, clash, matchmaking, and more. The last team talked about here is the alternate game modes team, which is responsible for all of the MOBA experiences, this means not TFT, outside of the Rift. To judge this last team, some of the things measured are play rates of these other modes, both average engagements and spikes in engagement. How players feel about alternative game modes, including whether event modes themselves are an important part about why players are excited about an event. how much alternative modes drive new engagement, aka someone coming back from not playing or playing the game more overall, versus players playing the same amount of time overall, just with some of their already existing time being put into the alternative game mode. Again, Meddler gave us all of this insight into these teams so we could be more informed, and hopefully feel less frustrated wondering how and why there are bumps in the road. Everything Riot does is done to give us a better gameplay experience, so please show some patience and understanding as they work towards a better and better game. And that is all we have to talk about today. Remember to let us know which splash art is your favorite in the comments below. We love seeing what you guys have to say. Can't wait to see you guys back for our next video, but for now, good luck on the Rift and wash your hands.